Follow along as we build a fitting tribute to the Land Rover Defender. This series is brought to you by LR Centre Limited and Frost Auto Restorers and SIP Industrial Products. Hello workshop chums and welcome back to the FunRover tribute build. There's a lot of updates this week that I'm pretty pleased to be able to tell you about, so let's see what we've been up to. So following on from last week, we finished off the swivels. We put the swivel housing on and set the proper preload for that, and that needs to be between 1.2 1.4 kilograms. So we use the spring balance, which you can buy from fishing shops and online, just to set that correctly. And I like to do it twice to make sure that I've got that set right. So use the shims on the upper pin, and then once you're happy with that, go ahead, add the brake bracket there, torque it down, then crucially add your rear seals. If you do that before setting your preload, then you're going to have a whole heap of problems because it adds friction. Then you add your seal retainer bracket, and that just mounts with these small bolts, 11 Newton meters you need to torque those up to. And then I added my stop blocks, which I'll adjust later on once we've got the proper wheels on. Then I put in the CVs with the half shafts on. Those locate. You need to just push it in, and then you can feel the grooves actually go into the side of the final drive unit. So we just slide that in and it'll locate home quite nicely. There you go, you see. Then I had to work on the stub axle, so hammered on the brass bush, and using an old CV end, put the roller bearing into the back of that. Then there's the mud shield to add, some bolts, and you can torque that down. Finally, the hubs, we've put the races in for the bearings, and we're putting the brake discs on now. These are EBC brake discs that have been slotted and drilled, and they look really snazzy. So we put those on, we'll torque those up later on. It's worth putting a bit of thread lock on, just to be safe. Then Carl is greasing up the wheel bearings. Just loading those, the rollers themselves, with multi-purpose lithium grease. Everybody has their own kind of preferences in terms of grease on wheel bearings. This is just a general purpose lithium grease for wheel bearings. Then we'll lubricate the back of the hub for the oil seal, grease the lips of the seal itself, and then press that home so it's flush. Or if you're looking in the workshop manual, it might say 4mm below the surface, but do whatever it says in your workshop manual and what you're happy with. So we push that in, grease up the end of the stub axle so we get a nice seal. And then slot on the hub and brake discs. And before putting in the outer wheel bearing, remembering wheel bearings are matched to the races, so you want to get those right. Then Carl's feeling the torque. He's done this hundreds of times, so he knows at what point the wheel bearing adjustment is set. Then you add your lock washer, and then the final outer hub nut, which needs torquing down again. You can torque these hubs, or you can do it by feel. And there we go, he's just locking down the lock washer to secure the hub nuts in place. We added the trailing arms, and Carl somehow picked up the entire axle with hubs and disc brakes and lifted that into place. Then using some axle stands and a couple of hammers, we were able to push it into place. I fastened on the A-frame ball joint nut and also the split pin that goes through that, so that's all neatly tidied up, and the bolts for the axle just needed knocking into place. Then we added the springs. Those just slot in, just lift into place, and the spring retainers and seats, need to bolt those on. We've gone for galvanized ones because these are items that rust quite badly. Then we added the wheels, and we could work on the front axle, so again similar process, this time adding the radius arms on. Andy and Carl this time jack up the chassis, roll the axle into place, and pull the radius arms through its mounting. There's bushes on the end of there, so make sure you check this with your workshop manual. It's a bit easier if you lower the chassis down, so you've got a good angle when you pull the axle in. Those are the nuts that go on the end along with new washers. And then just putting in the dampers. Those should come with washers and nuts for at each end. Because these aren't gas filled, they're quite easy to fix. They remain retracted, so we'll wait until we've got the spring retainers at the bottom sorted out before we extend those. Then it was jacked up so that we could put on the road wheels, but not the final wheels for the build. These are the old wheels that we're putting on because we don't want to spoil the surprise. The final wheels will be body colour. So as you can see, it's rolling chassis. Pretty exciting stuff. Good progress. Very pleased with this. Just to prove it is rolling. There you go. That is by definition rolling chassis. Carl's adding in this steering arm which will allow us to move the Land Rover around the workshop a bit easier. We can actually use it to steer and the wheels aren't going to go all over the place. And then he's just roughly adjusting that. We'll need to set that up finally, taking the measurement off the old one before we go to have all the tracking and everything sorted out at a garage with the equipment to do it. Then I wanted to clean the engine, so I first had to move the gearbox. That's going off to be reconned. So I'll just pull that out and drop it onto a pallet so that can go off for cleaning and overhaul. Just took the bell housing off, separate it, makes it a bit easier to carry it around. I also split the transfer box off, but I didn't get any video of that. So you'll have to just trust me. If you do, it's only a few bolts, but it makes it so much easier for lifting into the back of the car. So that was all put into the Jag van, which is getting totally mistreated. But anyway. Then I went about building up the SGS engineering engine stand that I purchased. Nice little stand this, very easy to set up, very sturdy, which of course you'd want from an engine stand, and it was just a case of jacking up the engine with the engine crane, and I removed the clutch. I'm going to put a new clutch and dual mass flywheel on as a matter of course because I've got good access at the minute, it'd be silly not to do. So I removed that. Thought I had a hold of the clutch, but I didn't, so the clutch removal tool that we used in our clutch swap video would have been a good idea. Dual mass flywheel, that needs to come off. Also we're going to replace that bushing in the back of the engine block there. I removed the rear cover from the engine, that rear plate, for setting up the engine stand. There you go, there's proof that it's on its own stand. I've put the engine on an engine stand. This one's from SGS Engineering. It matches our trolley jack and engine crane. Really like their company, good value products. So we've put it on there, and the idea is that now we've got full 360-degree access to the engine. I can get into the inlet manifold because I want to clean that out. The injector loom had the common TD5 problem of the oil siphoning down the wires back to the ECU, so I need to sort that out with a new loom. Wiring, hopefully, I haven't checked this yet, but there might be an update so that doesn't happen again. Want to have a look over stuff like the turbo. This engine's done 70 something thousand miles, so you know we can do basic maintenance, but because we've got so much room now it makes it a heck of a lot easier. I have drained the oil from the engine and it seemed to be okay. There wasn't really any like metal filings in there. It was running beautifully before I took it out of the car, so I'm confident it's a good engine, and with a bit of fettling, a bit of cleaning, it's going to do hopefully another 150,000 miles, so that's great. Solid engine we've got for the build. I'm using gunk to degrease the engine. I've sprayed on quite a lot of gunk already, and then I'm agitating it using the brush on type with a stiff bristle brush, a nail brush actually I bought from a shop, and also just this old paintbrush. Then once that's sat for about 5 minutes, I'll rinse it off. It's done a good job. I like gunk, works very well. So we'll do a bit more work on the engine next week. I'm now going to fit a new breather setup to the Land Rover. It had the TD5 Puma style breather fitted before, which was fine, nothing wrong with it, and it just needed replacing. But when I looked online, At the same time, we could actually fit a much improved system. What the breather does is it allows the sealed axle to vent, and if you have problems with your breather, if it gets blocked up the tubes, then oil, because of the pressure, can be pushed out the swivel ends, basically causing you problems down there. If you get leaks coming out here, it hits the inside of your tyre, potential for it to go on your brakes, not good. So this also stops water entering your axles, and that's obviously again something you want to avoid, because if you get water in, oil floats, it makes you think you've got more oil in there than you need. It's not providing the same lubrication that's required. So I want to fit a very good piece of quality kit. I found these axle breathers online from Gwyn Lewis 4x4 in Wales. They are pneumatic push fit elbows. This one's an M12, which is ideal for the TD5 and Puma axles. In the kit you get a tap. We had to add our own tap handle here, that's fine, we already had that. And it's got an M12 fitting on with an O-ring, so it'll seal up. It's really nice quality piece of kit this, so if you want to have a look at that, find it on gwynlewis4x4.co.uk. What I will do is I'll dip the tap in grease, because I don't want any of the filings that we make to drop into the oil inside, obviously. So I'll dip it in grease, that'll stop any of the metal shavings falling inside the axle. And then I can add the pipe later on. I'm going to add clear pipe so that I can actually see if I've got any blocks. And if I have, then you just blow down the end of the pipe, clears it out. And then you shouldn't have any problems with leaks from the axle tube ends. So that's the plan. Let's do that now. Right, so all you need to do to fit the breather kit valve is on a TD5 Puma axle you have a bush, a brass bush in there. That needs prizing out. That contains the push fitting for the old style breather tube. Once you've done that, you've got a 12mm hole. On the old Land Rovers, I believe it's a 1/8 inch hole. So you could, if you've got an older style one, look for one of these pneumatic fittings on eBay. So you want a 1/8 inch to 6mm the tube on the other end is. Elbow, find those on eBay quite cheaply actually. Tapping it, I've dipped it in grease. Now I'm just going to tap it in square and do that. I'll wipe the hole too. It's got a nice clean cut inside there, which is very good. Then we'll fit our elbow. That should just screw in there now. Shouldn't need any PTFE on it or anything because it's got a rubber O-ring. And I want to run the pipe this way towards the diff. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FunRover TV. You can see our last episode here, and also check us out on funrover.com. We are at FunRover on Twitter and Instagram, and we're also on Facebook.